Boom! Hey, how's it going, everyone? This is Andy the Game Maker here with the Fun and Victorious podcast. I took the time to interview my good friend Dustin Staats. Dustin is a board game designer. He is very much focused in the educational board game space. That was something that I was really interested in, so I brought him on to talk about that, as well as his brick and mortar game store that he just opened up in Pasadena, California. And I thought that was all interesting and worthwhile talking about. And we even talked about his running ventures as well. He completed a 50-mile race just fairly recently, so we went into that and talked about that. It was super cool and fun. I really hope you enjoy the conversation. But before we do that, you know what I'm going to do, right?
Crypto Cartel is a 2 to 8 player game where players must work to build up their own resources in order to accumulate as much cryptocurrency while playing through the main deck 3 times. Players earn the ability to earn cryptocurrency as they collect cards of similar types, and then exchanging them during the game. Simultaneously, the cryptocurrency gives each player the ability to earn cards from the Silk Road deck. These cards give players the ability to attack their opponents, defend any impending attacks, or fend off the DEA. The DEA cards appear in the main deck during the second and third rounds of the game, forcing a player to give up their most valuable production line. You must develop production lines with multiple cards in succession as quickly as possible, and in order to do this, you must make effective trades with other players. But be careful, get too far ahead and everyone will go after you.
To secure your copy of Crypto Cartel, please go to my website at AndyTheGameMaker.com. Each copy you purchase helps supports the content of this programming. You can also donate money at the link in the description below. But more importantly, please leave likes and comments for this video. And if you don't mind, please subscribe and hit the notification bell so you can stay up to date with all the content. So without further ado, let's start the show. Well, Dustin, thank you again for joining me on the Fun and Victorious podcast. It's so great to get connected with you. I just want to start off by saying, giving you a really nice compliment, and that you are one of my favorite parts about being a creative type and trying to do creative projects on the internet. And people, I think people don't really truly appreciate what that actually means until they actually done it. So specifically, one of the things I learned in the process of making Crypto Cartel is that there's someone who is almost as and I have to, I just want to qualify. I'm about to say, like, when you're doing a creative project, no one should be more interested in your project than you at the end of the day, because it's your project, right? So, but with that being said, it was really a pleasant surprise to see people, meet people like you online, to collaborate on something like that and to get the ball rolling. And I'm just really grateful to have known you, get to know you, work with you on this project, speaking the past tense, of course. And I'm just really, really grateful for all the lessons that you taught me just working with you. So it's been great knowing you for as long as I have, and I really appreciate everything you did for Crypto Cartel.
No, yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you also for having me on the show. And I remember reading your post on Reddit, and I saw the passion you had for your project. And it was also, for me, it was you were one of the first people I started working with inside the board game space, outside of like the podcast. I think I started the podcast at that point. I don't know. It was a long time ago now. It was probably like 5 years ago.
It's yeah. It's funny because I remember. It's funny like how I marked like the whole process, because I kicked out the Facebook fan page back in like October 2017. That was like the official birthday of like Crypto Cartel. Originally Cartel, a card game, if you remember how far back this goes.
Right.
But yeah, that's when I started it. And I started reaching out and trying to work with different people like Alan, people like you, people like Odd. And that was just such a great little fun little entrepreneurial endeavor, which I think it's worthwhile, noting that there's it doesn't take much to really get things going. And it's just, again, there's just people who have just as much energy as you do if you're going to be working on something like this, which I think is great. And so what I wanted to do actually is to start off this conversation, because I know you're a bit of a globe trotter, if you will, and because you were in Taiwan when we first connected. Is that correct?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So what's the background story behind that? How did you end up in Taiwan?
I guess, I mean, starting from the beginning, I'm from Nebraska, so I
Oh,
did
wow.
not leave the country until I think I was 20. I had my 21st birthday in Mexico for I celebrated at a sushi karaoke bar for my 21st birthday in Mexico. So it was a pretty good 21st birthday. But I studied abroad for that summer, and then I kind of got the travel bug. I think that was the first time, and I was really like excited to do some more traveling. So when I graduated university, the first job that I was offered was to teach in South Korea.
Oh, wow.
Um, and so from there, I taught there, and I came back, went to grad school, and part of my grad school program was teaching and studying for a year in China. So then I was in mainland China, and that's where my wife and I started dating, and we knew we wanted to live abroad again after we got married. So we decided we would move to Taiwan since she had lived there in college too, and she wanted to continue practicing her Chinese. So it was just a good option. We were super happy with Taiwan. Like we miss it.
Yeah.
We loved it there.
So what kind of advice can you give to someone who, like, if I wanted to travel abroad, whether it's for school or for, work, what have you, what kind of advice could you give to that person who is really interested in doing something like that?
Yeah, I would say so. First, I'm happy to answer any questions. If anybody's looking for teaching abroad, I that was my dissertation in grad school, is how to recruit teachers and looking at companies that do that. So I have a lot of background knowledge. So if anybody has questions, feel free to ask out. But as far as like general advice, I guess there's like a couple different experiences as far as like if you're going to vacation abroad versus like going to live abroad. If you're going to live abroad, finding two different communities is really important. One, the expat community, because
Mm,
they're very tight knit. They're very helpful. They can help you like learn how to navigate whatever foreign country you're in, and then also finding a community of folks in that country, because learning that culture, and especially if you're going to be living there long term, like planning to learn the language, because you don't need to be fluent in the language to appreciate the culture and the language. If you do go, like, even just taking a beginner class for a couple months, I think is totally worth it. You'll feel so much better about living in the country and learning the culture there.
Do you feel like, I think I can probably, because I have a unique perspective on this, having been in the army, having deployed to Iraq, um, and as far as being kind of a fish out of water in terms of, somewhere that's completely different than the US, do you feel like you learn more when you're traveling abroad versus, just like, reading about something consistently and just trying to, dedicate that time to learn about wherever it is you might be going?
Oh yeah, I think a lot of learning is also like passive learning too. I don't know if I'd call it passive, but you're like every single day you're learning small little things about a culture and a country, and like even the larger picture, like that country's economy and how like real estate works there. For example, in Taiwan, it's insane how expensive their apartments are, but you learn that like what do I want to call it? Like generational wealth, owning land is a big part of that. So landlords will be willing to lose money on renting out a space for cheap, even though it's super expensive for them, because that owning that property is very important to generational wealth there.
Interesting. Okay, yeah, because I guess like one of the things I always think about, and like my sister, I have a sister who also like did a semester at sea. She traveled abroad as well, and we've kind of like gone back and forth about this. But basically, like when you're kind of like what you're talking about, the passive learning, where you're like around the people, when you're around the culture,
Mm.
something else completely different, and not to mention it just kind of um, it helps you eliminate, and I guess any misconceived notions, preconceived notions, I guess you could say, before you go there and before you see things. And I'm not sure what that was like for you. I guess like what was like a pleasant surprise of like living in,
Mm.
whether it's like Taiwan or South Korea or any of those places.
Yeah, it's hard to think back to what was a misconceived notion, but definitely there were many, because being from Omaha, Nebraska, our our culture is not very diverse. Um, what is a cool fact is Lincoln is one of the most diverse places, Lincoln, Nebraska, but that doesn't mean go out and I'm in those
Mhm.
communities, right?
Right.
Um, So I think I don't know. I mean, I can't think of a specific example, but I definitely know I've learned a lot being around cultures and just like I mean, this is kind of a funny story. My wife and I we had pupusas, and this might be some history or some knowledge for anyone, but um, and don't feel bad if you don't know this, but we had pupusas for our wedding like pre-party,
Hmm.
and my wife's from Peru, but and pupusas are from El Salvador, so everyone thought and now think my family now still thinks this today. So I have to like remind them, hey, those are from El Salvador. Cause I told them we had a Peruvian barbecue yesterday and they're like, oh, pupusas. Like, no, no, that's from El Salvador. But yeah. So stuff
Yeah.
like that. I mean, it's small little things, but you kind of learn to like respect different cultures and the nuances within them too.
Yeah, for sure. That's really cool. Um, and then as far as like, so how did you fall into the whole board gaming space while living abroad? Is that something you just kind of picked up as a hobby? Is that like how did that all come into play?
Yeah, that's it. So when I lived in mainland China, I mean, I played a lot of games growing up, like most people that are in the board game space. Maybe not everyone, but I played like Risk, Monopoly, played
Yep.
some other tabletop games, and played Magic, Pokemon. I
Hmm.
discovered Dominion, and that was kind of where I was like, "Whoa, that's something that's different, and I don't need to spend a bunch of money on cards."
Yeah.
Um, and then I went to that I discovered in DC. And then when I started the podcast Board Gaming with Education in Taiwan, that's where I started looking at board games as a bigger venture and something that can be a business as
Hmm.
well. So when we started the podcast, it was all about teaching English language learners how to play a specific game by going over the vocabulary, the grammar, and the how to play rules. So then they can go out and play that game in English. But we found a lot of teachers that were not English language teachers would listen to our show. And so we broadened that to board game with education. And that was kind of where I really looked at the board game hobby as more of a business. But before that, I was playing a lot of games because that's why I decided to use them in my classroom.
So so I guess you to summarize, it sounds like the whole educational aspect is like focused mostly on language. Is that the primary function of like what you're trying to work with?
Yeah, initially it was. Our first like 2 seasons of the podcast, if you listen to it, were like super goofy. We create skits that you would hear in like a language book.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's pretty funny. And we talk super slow. So it's not exciting for a English speaker, native English speaker, but definitely as a learner, it's hopefully fun and entertaining.
Right. What are some lessons that you've kind of learned about making, an educational game like the ones you've been made before?
Yeah, I guess the biggest thing is there's the learning content like creating a game. There's a couple different ways to look at an educational game. You create the game to target specifically a learning outcome, or you take a pre-made game and you pull the learning outcomes out of it. So I've done a couple different of those things. I haven't created like I've never published a game, but I've created some educational games for my classroom. For example, I had a negotiation game for a business English course,
Oh, wow.
and they would have secret objectives to complete. So they would start with a certain number of resources and money, and their objectives would be like you need to hire a certain number of employees, or you need to have I don't know. I think I did iPhones. There's resources, 100 iPhones by the end of the class, and so they would go around to other businesses, business groups, and ask them what they have and see if they would willing to make a trade. And then they would come up into the front of the classroom. They would make their trade publicly. The other business would accept or decline or make a counter offer. And then if they settled on a good trade, they would trade. And then at the end of the class, I would ask who completed their objective. So, and they got bonus points that way too.
Oh, that's really cool. How did you come up with that idea for the for the business training game?
It was mainly to serve a purpose of making making the class more interactive
Right.
and like fun, and also going over these different grammar structures and vocabulary they have to use. So I also rewarded them bonus points if they used certain vocabulary when they're at the front of the classroom or accepting or declining an offer. And then just practicing some of the grammar structures are important for when they come up to the classroom. Like they have to be able to use that grammar structure. So it was just a way to like, how can I because otherwise they're just reading these like dialogues out of the book, and that's no
Right.
fun. Like that's not, and I don't even think that's really much learning. Like maybe it's a bit of reinforcing some learning that you've done previously, but really like I don't think it's super strong for learning the language.
Interesting. Yeah. That's really that's pretty awesome. I think that's what's really cool about just games in general, because obviously the interactive part is probably the most valuable portion of it, because I mean they have solo games, which personally I'm not into those. Like
Mm,
I like getting around with people and socializing. I especially like the social deduction games, just because it's oftentimes you have to really think about the people around you, and you have to kind of like figure out like how they behave. And it's so funny because like we'll play like, I'm not sure. Do you have much experience with social deduction games?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So like it's hilarious because I'll sit down. I'll play with just about anyone. I recently played with my parents. My dad, he's on the older side, and he's a pretty honest guy. Like he's not like much of a liar. So it's which is kind of funny because when you sit across from someone like them, when you think, okay, I can read them, they're pretty easy to
Mm.
read. You learn that that's not always the case. It's sometimes harder to do that, harder um I guess get a good read on people in that regard. But anyways, it just those are always really entertaining, really fun, and that's really cool that you found a means to kind of communicate and just educate people with these different game ideas. And so, how long have you been using games to like teach people?
Ever since I started. So I created an Avengers gamification toolkit for my classroom when I first started, and that was I had a very tough class. Like this was my first time learning how to manage behavior that was not manageable in my classroom. Um, and so I created Avengers. I cut out like these, I don't know, 4x4 inch Avenger like pieces of
Yeah,
paper, and each student they paired up in groups and they got to choose an adventure or avenger, and if they were doing certain behavior that I wanted to model in the classroom, and or if they answered questions that we went over in the class correctly, their avenger would move across the board, and at the end of the board was Loki. What
ah,
I think it was Loki. I think Loki was the bad guy then. Yeah.
yeah,
So if they made it to whoever's group made it to the end of the board, they got some bonus stars. I also had thought of a cool thing that I don't remember if I actually did this now, but they got to crumple up a piece of paper and try to throw it at Loki. And if they hit it, they get some more bonus stars.
yeah.
So, and then one thing that's really important is like, well, how do I manage negative behavior in my classroom?
Hmm.
I got to choose one of the Avenger characters, because in gamification, one of the things you don't want to do is take away earned points. So you don't want to
Right,
take away something they've earned and moved forward on the board. You don't want to punish them after they've already earned it. So instead, if they did behavior that I didn't want to happen in my classroom, my character would move over. So then I can acknowledge, hey, this is behavior we should not be seeing in the classroom. Now I'm going to move forward.
right,
Um, and then that kind of takes away, if my guy gets to the end, it takes away the fun part of the game at the end.
right. And then so your class, like what was your typical student like? Like how old were they? Like what were they like in terms of behavior? Like were they?
So I had 7 to 13, and that class, I think they were like 11, 12-year-old. I think I had like 6 or 7 boys and 1 girl. It
Yeah.
was small class sizes. So usually it's pretty manageable, and like most of the time the kids were pretty awesome, but it's just that one class I think they kind of they like to cause trouble.
Yeah. As far as like behavior and management, so like generally speaking, you haven't had too much of a difficulty. So is this like through like the public school systems and overseas? Like what was that?
This is what do they call it? Hagwon. So like an after school cram school
Okay.
in South Korea. I that's Most of my teaching has been at university level, so that was middle school. And then I've done university level, and then I've done some like after school programs in the US. And yeah, I don't think I've worked really with high school in a formal setting. I've done some like tutoring and stuff.
Okay. What's it? Have you noticed any major differences between students in the U.S. versus students abroad?
Um, Yes, they're not used to the what do they call it? Oh my gosh, it's been a while since I've talked about this. What's his name? Confucius. Is
Yeah.
that yeah, the Confucius style of teaching, where there's person in front of the classroom, and everybody like respects that person, and there's no like peer-to-peer learning much that takes place in those classrooms. So it's a lot of like lectures.
Interesting.
So that's what a lot of university students in China loved about English language learning, or that I guess that major we'd call it. I don't think they call it majors, but um, they like that interactive part of it. But it was new to them. So when I taught freshmen, my the year that I was there, they were very confused on how to like interact in that classroom. And you could kind of tell some of the students that maybe had um, those types of English teachers, whether they were Chinese teachers that taught English and they used those types of instruction models in their classroom, or you had teachers or students that were not used to that at all. And so it
Right.
was very obvious when when like I would set up a like an activity that they would have to do in groups, and you can tell like some of the students that were like pretty much ready to go and like find a classmate, and then others that were kind of a little confused.
That's interesting. So in other words, like there's I mean, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it sounds like it's almost like they were told what to think. Is that fair to say, or is it no? Is the dialogue just different between the students and teachers
In
compared
a
to like
way, like a good example is like English literature. There's there's thousands of interpretation on even classic literature,
right,
and there's no one way to interpret it. I mean,
right,
of course, there's some general understandings, and in the field, there's these ideas that are pretty like, yeah, this is what this is getting at, like The Great Gatsby. Um, there are general interpretations on what that book means. However, um, we also have our own interpretations, right?
hmm
We kind of create what we want to think about a different, like, I don't know, it's different aspects of the book, but we need to back it up with like claims and evidence from the reading.
right,
And and at least in my experience at the university, a lot of English literature, there was the one way to interpret it, or the two ways to interpret it. There wasn't like a way where you can create your own interpretations. And I would notice that in a lot of the papers that I would ask students to write, it was a lot of the same stuff, because they would find like examples within there was one literature book that they kind of had as part of their major that I told them it wasn't required. They didn't have to use it, but a lot of them use that book, and they're like, "Oh yeah, this is what it means. This is how we interpret this reading."
that's interesting. And so it's almost like a canned response with respect to that reading. Is that the way you kind of look back on it?
Yeah, yeah, a little bit. I mean, yeah, I would say there were a handful of students who did do or did write a little bit different than what I was expecting, or what I had read, like several hundreds of papers. I think I
Right,
feel like I probably had like 200 students at that time.
for
Yeah.
sure.
But yeah, I would say like for the most part, a lot of, because there's a one way that the literature is interpreted for the most part. I mean, this is kind of also like um, grouping that idea into one idea that's not necessarily always true.
Right, right. Yeah. That's interesting because because I'm a nerd when it comes down to like looking for like symbolism, for example, in books and movies, where I try to like pay attention to what stuff means. Like so for example, I just listened it's kind of funny. I was just listening to this two-part video this morning. It was I'm not sure if you know who like Ronald D. Moore from Battlestar Galactica is, like the Battlestar Galactica reboot. He was like the main writer, the showrunner for that show. Um, and he was talking about the things that he took from the original series and then what he added to stuff that moved from the original series to the reboot in 2004, and then the stuff that he kind of added in there just to kind of make it more interesting, more relevant to the times, because like in 2004 that was shortly after 9/11, the invasion of Iraq. So there's a lot of
Mm,
those themes in the book, or in the book, the reboot. um but there's also like contextual clues in there. So for
wow.
example, like um there's also some like Old Testament stuff, but there's also obviously the character names like Apollo. There's like
Mm,
what other names? I'm just thinking about the top of my head. Obviously Apollo is reference to like the Greek god of Apollo, which is Greek gods are kind of like a thing in the original series. They also had like Egyptian themes, which didn't really make it way over from what I noticed. But at least the way they formed their government, from what he was saying in the newer TV series. It was very much a polytheistic society, if you will, where they believe in multiple gods. They always refer to gods in plurals, versus the Cylons. They believe in like one singular monotheistic god, which is kind of interesting. But again, like they kind of like laid that in there, like clues in there, so you can kind of understand and pick that up. So, but yeah, that's really interesting. And I guess so. How is it? I always, again, one of the things I'm really appreciative about you, having worked with you, you linked me up with Odd out there in Taiwan, who did a really great job of being, eyes on the ground for everything that was taking place with the manufacturer. So how did you come in contact with him, out of curiosity?
I think going back to like finding communities, he is an expat, so the communities, especially the board game community in Taiwan, and even Taiwanese and expat community, I knew pretty well. And I think I met him first at a board game design meetup, I believe.
Oh, cool.
Smooks, I don't know his last name. I want to say Chen, but I'm not 100% sure. I'm just thinking of what I see on Facebook. So, but he's I would say the Taiwanese board game guy. He lines up all these board game design meetups. He's like a big person when it comes to all the conventions that they do over there. So he hosts those board game design meetups, I think like once a month. I'm not sure after the pandemic how often they do them, or if I'm not sure how because I left like just before the pandemic. So it was once a month at the time. And yeah, I met him, and I met a lot of other gamers through that too.
Right. Yeah. Pandemic was crazy. And like for a while, it seemed like Taiwan had like completely missed it altogether up until like fairly recently. I was really impressed for a while. Obviously they hit, and then obviously there's like, okay, what's going to happen with Taiwan? So that was really interesting. And then I guess what I want to know about as well is, so if you don't mind, because there's probably people out there who are interested in doing like a brick and mortar business, for example. Like, and I gotta say, it's really impressive to see that you took that on to do your own thing, especially in California, where things were pretty strict with lockdowns and what have you. So what was take me through that process? What was that like? When did you decide you want to open up a brick and mortar in Southern California?
Yeah, so I would say if anyone's interested, to take it slow and easy. And even for us opening the brick and mortar, I still get a bit of imposter syndrome because I think we pushed a little bit too fast.
Yeah.
And we had to take on a bit of debt to get to where we are, opening the store, and the space that was available opened up, and it was a good price. And so we're like, okay, we got to do this. This is like a perfect shopping center. The price is like really good for LA and the other places I've been looking into. So we weren't planning. This is July 2022. We were kind of shooting for August 2022, but we opened in April, and we we signed the lease the end of January. So, but previously, before that, we started the Board Game with Education podcast like 5 years ago. Of course, the community for that is not the same community for the brick and mortar, but we were able to kind of like learn what it's like to start a project, kind of learn what it's like. Like, I've never done any sort of business before, what it's like to manage income and expenses and keep that under wraps, because the income and expenses are insane, from a small podcast to doing like some events here and there in Taiwan to brick and mortar store. Like, if I hadn't done that previously, I would be like way over my head right now. I kind of feel like I am. I'm like still like, okay, I gotta get on to QuickBooks, and I'm figuring that out, and that's a pain in the butt. But so we started the podcast, but even just kind of leading up to the brick and mortar, when we moved back to LA, we were planning on using a similar business model we started with Taiwan, which is very events based. So running events based on language exchanges with board games and or professional development with teachers, teaching them how to use games in the classroom. We wanted to do something similar here in LA, but the pandemic hit. So then we turned into an e-commerce store. And with that, we carried 2 publishers. Like, we only had 2 publishers at the very beginning. And then we kind of just started adding more and more games, more and more inventory. We started with like $800 worth of inventory, maybe $1,200. And now our cost, like the cost of our inventory, is like close to $35,000. So
oh wow,
we started with very little. And we would add like a couple hundred a month. And then eventually we got to doing events in the area. So the pandemic did do some good things for businesses. A lot of smaller businesses were able to start up because one thing that was normal were these markets. And so you saw a lot of like people that maybe left their job and wanted to try something new, and they started like a cooking business, and they would host their, their booth at an event. So we were able to do
Mhm.
some of that stuff, and that helped us, grow our inventory a little bit quicker. And then we had rented a kiosk in the Northridge Mall here in LA. And that was something where we took out a loan to get some more inventory for that and pay for rent, but it was a very good endeavor. We profited that couple months. Granted, we had no staff, like it was just me working the kiosk, but
For sure,
that's
yeah.
kind of part of the process. And then from there, we signed our lease in the end of January. That was the kiosk was kind of like the test. Like, can I do this? Is it worth it? Will it be like profitable? Um, and now we're at the point where like I'm planning on hiring some staff at the end of the month because we're starting to run some like a big pillar of our business model are the events and programs. So we have a board game camp at the end of July. We have D&D for younger players. So we have a lot of stuff like that for students or for kids too.
Mhm. Oh, wow, that's really cool. You know what I love about that? It's well, the first thing I thought of when you were describing this is there's a lesson that I've learned. I'm not sure if you've heard this expression before, but like starting a business is like building a plane while it's in flight. Like,
Yeah,
it's like,
pretty much.
yeah, you're hoping one it keeps flying and one you want to land safely, of course. And that's just really neat because I think I can relate with a lot of what you're saying. For obviously with Crypto Cartel, but then also, for example, doing this podcast, this is kind of like a leg for me. Initial, I guess, arm, I should say, of Crypto Cartel to kind of help promote the brand, if you will, along the way, which I think is worthwhile, and I think
For
it's going
sure.
to really help get recognition out there. But at the same time, what's really great about this is it seems like you've kind of applied something that um, I've always thought of when I talked about, like starting a small business or any endeavor for that matter, where it's you start really small. You start really small and then you just kind of like slowly scale up because that's everyone starts low,
Mm,
low and small. Whether it's you're in a new industry, you're the low man on the totem pole, or it's a small business. You guys, obviously you want to embrace the fact that you're okay. This is gonna be, um, don't go in there saying like, oh, I need to take out like this massive loan or anything. You don't have to take out a
right.
massive loan. You can just do, bootstrap your business.
Mm,
And it sounds like you've effectively done that where you just like, I just love hearing the $800, dollars worth of inventory that expanded to 35,000. That's really impressive. What would you attribute to that, that growth? Like, what do you think really helped you, scale your business in that regard?
oh man, that's a good question. I'm just thinking about like now and how we're growing. I think one thing is we are or I feel like I'm a pretty personable person. Um, so I think that helps. My wife and I are friendly people, and I've worked in. So I did 10 years. I did a decade in the restaurant business, a decade in education. Now I say I'm going to do a decade in retail at least. And working in a restaurant really helps with interacting with customers and learning and serving the needs of the customer, because
Hmm.
that's one thing that I think is really important to us is when we have a guest in the stores is getting to know them on a human level versus a transactional level. And
Yeah.
yeah, and learning kind of like what are they looking for and making sure we can find that experience for them, because we don't want to give them a game that they may not enjoy. That doesn't mean that like there's this game and no one will enjoy it. It just means it's not right for that person in
Right.
this experience.
For sure. Yeah. There's a, that's what's really interesting. It's something I've learned about this space is that that people are very particular about what they want. Um, and they have very specific ideas, and when you give them something that they aren't really looking for, they tend not to appreciate it, and then they'll let you know too. Sometimes
Mm.
they'll be very vocal about that. They'll be very opinionated about that, which is fine. I mean, you get those with like I'm sure like just about any business nowadays. Um, but yeah, and to your other point, I think something I've learned. So like my day job, I'm in sales. So one of the things that I think has is kind of like leads into what you say about being a very personable person, and that's I think like likability is something that's really kind of important for any business where you got to be like if if people don't like you, they're not going to buy from you.
Yeah.
It's just plain and simple. It's just if you're like a very unpleasant person, if your demeanor is just not, you don't have a very attractive demeanor in that regard, they're gonna they're not gonna want to spend time with you, and they're not gonna want to keep coming to your store or your business or what have you. And so you, again, like every moment matters, even if they're like, if you don't sell them a game this time, for example, there's a chance that they come back the second or third time and they eventually buy a game. And I think that's something that's really important. So, cool. And I guess what has been like the most difficult thing about starting up a business, especially in like the past like 2 years?
Man, that's a tough question. There's just so many things, so many lessons learned.
For sure.
And I think this is just in the forefront of my head because I mentioned before QuickBooks. I hate QuickBooks. Like
Yeah.
doing accounting is just I like accounting, but I hate trying to make the software work for me. But that's probably not the most difficult. I think the most difficult is like just sticking with it and being confident
Hmm.
and having faith about it too. I think there's a lot of days where I wake up and I'm like, man, we haven't had a good sales day the last couple days, or like when we first opened the store, I mean, it's still kind of happening where we have a couple events we'll run and like one or two people show up, and it's like it's a frustrating experience, but then just kind of having faith and knowing that I'm doing all the right things, or I'm putting in at least effort every single day to move forward, and just kind of having faith in that. I think it's hard to always have that or always see that. It's really easy to get frustrated when, even though I know I'm doing some of the right things.
Right. Yeah. That's something I've learned as well. Like, as an entrepreneur, you're gonna have like your bad days, and you should embrace those bad days in terms of not like, you don't have to love the bad days, but at least expect that they're gonna be, anticipate that they'll still be there, and but also realize that those are just fleeting moments. I
Mm,
guess is something that I've always learned, and I think that, I think it's kind of part of like, to your point, it's a matter of just like you keep going. There's a story of I heard fairly recently about the band Death Cab for Cutie, and
mm,
one of the lessons with them, someone asked them, so how did you guys become so successful? And basically their answer was this, is that, so like in high school, like they had their band, right? But then other people had bands as well, and everyone would start, everyone would be playing, but then slowly but surely over time, just attrition, people go to college, the
mm,
band breaks up, or life circumstances, they have families, whatever, they like just don't, they stop playing, but their band was like the very last band that was playing, and just out of virtue of just doing it, and just
yeah.
regardless, I mean, their music is still really good, but regardless of like, of that, even like, you don't necessarily have to be amazing necessarily, so long as you keep doing it and you're there. I think that's a huge part of being successful, whether it's, having your own store, your own game, or whatever. Just so long as you keep going, you keep pushing forward. That's something that seems to be a very common theme among among a lot of successful businesses. It's just, you just keep going.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's true. I don't you wouldn't be around if you didn't keep going too.
For sure, definitely.
It's kind of
And then what's the best part about having a business in Pasadena?
so we're in the West Hills area, but
Okay.
I think the best thing is getting to know a lot of our customers and community. I think that's really cool, and seeing like my wife, she loves being in the store, but she does a full-time job. So it's sometimes she's like, oh man, I like she has to be here sometimes. And I kind of feel bad because I know she has other stuff to do.
Right.
But the other Sunday, she always covers the register while I host a Pokemon class from 12 to 1 on Sundays. So last Sunday, this past, like, what was it, a couple days ago, she came in to cover that. But she never left because people came in and kept playing, and she said to me like, "Oh, I love seeing it like this. Like I love the livelihood and people playing games and having fun and like getting to know other people in the community." Like for me also, that's super cool, like seeing a space that I know is a safe, thriving space for a gaming community. We even had someone who she comes in and plays D&D on Thursdays, and she hangs out at the store after we close for a bit, and she's like, "I just really appreciate having the space here, and I hope you don't mind that I stay because I like feel comfortable hanging out here, and like hearing that for me is just like super awesome.
For sure. And how long did it take you to prepare your brick and mortar store from start to opening?
So we signed the lease the end of January. We had we had some issues. This is kind of a fun story. So, um, it's not the most flattering story to tell about our space, but I think most people in the neighborhood are pretty aware that it used to be an underground casino, and these 3 units next to us. Yeah. So the police broke in and they cut the power when they kind of raided the place,
Oh,
and
wow.
so it took us a long time to get the power restored. We had to like go through so many loops and talk to the power department,
Oh,
LA
jeez.
Department of Power and Water. I'd actually go down to the police station and talk to the 2 police officers and tell them what we're doing. And so they also came by, I guess, at one point, and we had a sign up on our door, like telling everybody what we wore. And there were some dice there, and we're also tabletop games. So like people that aren't familiar with the board game hobby aren't sure tabletop games kind of sounds like poker or gambling. Um, and so, yeah, we had to go talk to the police station, and then they finally restored the power. So that was like a good 3 or 4 weeks without power. So we were doing like I was more assessing the space. I don't think I really did a lot during that time. So end of January, and then we finally opened our doors end of April. So 3 months, and give or
Wow.
take like 2 or 3 weeks of like dealing with power. But I mean, you should expect those things. Like we wanted to soft open the beginning of April, and we didn't soft open until like April 18th or something like that.
What prevented you? What got in the way of the soft opening?
Just like nothing was like we were still, yeah, it was there were just things that we didn't have finished. I mean,
Hmm.
and that's a really good lesson that I learned too is like planning. One thing that I waited to do is get TVs, and TVs are not expensive, but installing them are very expensive. And there's
Mm.
always a business surcharge for anything you want to do. So Best Buy has a really cool program. It's like $199 a year, and if you buy a TV from them, they'll install it in your house for free, something like that. I don't know. You have to look into it, but it's like, okay, perfect. I'll sign up for this and I'll do this. And then they tell me, no, you're a business, so each TV costs at least $400 to
Oh
install.
my
And I'm
gosh.
like, whoa, okay. So I was looking at like $1,500 to install 3 TVs, and then I like called around. I got some places. There was one person who could do it for like I think it was like 700 or 800, but he couldn't make it in until after our grand opening. And I wanted these TVs in for the grand opening because it was a big part of it. So eventually, I found a company that was kind of in between both prices, but it just yeah, if I would have kind of planned for that and yeah, just give yourself more time.
That's super annoying that Best Buy was gonna upcharge you so much like that. Like,
Yeah.
uh,
Well,
it,
I wouldn't just call it Best Buy because everyone does it. There's so many companies that do stuff like that. It's just the business surcharge for stuff. It's yeah.
fair
Like, oh,
enough.
you're a business, so now there's we need this money because they know
Uh,
you kind of need it.
yeah.
You
Oh,
can write it
jeez.
off as an expense.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. Well, that's crazy. And then did you do any planning? Like what gave you what inspired you to want to open up a brick and mortar?
I think going back to that community aspect, that's something that I've always wanted to have a space for, and that's a big part of the gaming industry is what do they call it, like third space. So a space that you can go to that's not home and not home or school and or work, and it's kind of like an outside space where you feel like almost at home, you feel part of a community. And I mean I noticed our sales already, like our in-person sales are 80% with our online sales being 20%. So when we were just online, of course we were making sales, but it's crazy what percentage of our sales are now that we have a physical space and people are just coming in to, they want to come in and hang out, maybe play a game, bring their friends. Yeah.
Do you feel like people are pretty enthusiastic to get back in the store after the pandemic?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I would say it's interesting because I talked to some people like, oh yeah, we had a game group that met every week after the pen or before the pandemic, and now we like never meet. Or there's other game groups that are like, yeah, we're still going online, we're still meeting once a week online, but now I'm kind of craving some in person play. So it goes a lot of different ways.
For sure. Yeah. That's one of the things I did during the pandemic. At first is I had a buddy who um would like organize like Zoom calls basically, and we would get,
Mm.
do like Jackbox games, for
Oh,
example,
nice.
and those are tons of fun.
Do you have a
Um,
favorite Jackbox
yeah.
Jackbox game, like
Yeah, I like I like I like being off color with my humor, so I love
okay.
like Quibbage, stuff like that.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah, just where you can input answers. There's another one. Oh, it's I want to say it's in Jackbox 3, but basically it's they give you like a random photo and you have to caption it off the internet. It's like it's killing me. I have to look it up here in a little bit, but it's again, it's just an opportunity just to be really ridiculous. And
Yeah.
it was oh, it's like a two-part. It's basically it was like they gave you like a topic or like a question and you answer the question and then someone had to add something on top of it.
Oh, okay.
And so it's kind of like that. Like I'm probably not doing a good job of explaining it, but it just I think I was really good at like setting people up with like really uncomfortable questions or scenarios where they had to address it.
Yeah.
Otherwise, obviously they would like, not get it right.
That's
Or
fun.
not, they wouldn't, people wouldn't go with it, or it usually produces like a really funny outcome. Which, and I just love those games too. I like the games where people can get passionate one way or the other. Like,
Mm.
like the days of that's part of the reason why, for better or worse, why Risk is such a fun game, because people really get into it, and
Yeah.
you get the table flipping occasionally,
Yeah.
where people get really upset. But Risk, yeah, that's that game in my family is for a while it was like kind of banned just because of how contentious it gets. Just because
Mm.
people get creative, they do, oh, we'll do a little alliance, whatever, just ally with me just for this turn or whatever, and then some people break the alliances and say sorry, like I gotta accomplish this mission.
Like Diplomacy. Have you played Diplomacy?
No, actually,
Oh man.
there was you should I ought to introduce you to my buddy Mark Calderaro. I had a podcast interview with him not long ago, and he recommended Diplomacy, and I guess I had no idea. But I guess like JFK used to play Diplomacy.
Oh
Oh,
really?
yeah, so did
Oh.
Henry Kissinger. Like
Oh.
those guys really like playing it, but my understanding is that can get pretty
Yeah,
contentious.
yeah, we did that during the pandemic. It was really cool. We had our group chats going and like we would do a turn every day or something every other day. Yeah, it was cool. Or
Like
no, maybe
slow
it's like once a week. Yeah.
slow virtual analog, basically.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
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 Yeah,
Yeah.
that's come up quite a bit in conversations, especially with my brother. Like I think he's played it, my brother Anthony. And so I might have to give that a try here in the near future. Um, it's kind of funny recently. I actually, because my sister, she got married, and my sister, she's a law tuber, and she's she's in this whole law tube group. So she invited all these lawyers, law tubers, to her wedding, and at the end of the wedding, I finally got a chance to do an escape room for the first time
Oh,
down at Orange County over at the
okay.
Irvine Spectrum. It
Mm.
was the escape game. You ever done an escape room before?
Yeah, yeah, I've done a handful.
Those are great.
Yeah,
Those
they're
are
fun.
uh, like one thing that I wasn't ready for was there was like it's just weird because when on your, I'm not sure what your first escape room was like, but
Mm.
you don't know what to expect necessarily
Yeah.
in terms of like how do you get this ball rolling. And then once you figured that out, once we kind of picked up on, okay, this is, they try to give you like clues. It's like environmental. I mean,
Mm.
like what have your like escape room experience has been like?
I've done a few. Like we did one. The very first one was in Omaha, and there Omaha's not the best. Like LA, they have a lot of really, really good ones.
Yeah,
But it was pretty good. I really liked the theme and the story behind that one, but the clues were kind of more or less not the best.
like on the nose or what?
Yeah, I think there was some too many red herrings, which is like a clue that doesn't lead to anything, which kind of ruins the experience if you have too many of them.
Yeah.
I think that was the issue. And then I did another one for our bachelor party in Omaha, and then we like creamed it. We finished in like 37 minutes.
Oh,
And it was
wow.
a really cool theme, really cool. Like the puzzles and things were cool. We just had too many people, and so we just we did it too quick. Yeah.
Yeah, that was so we broke up into two different groups over the escape game, as they call it. And one group went into, it was called Prison Break, And I guess what you do is they start you off in 2 opposing cells, and you have to, I guess what that forces you to do is you communicate, like, with the other group, basically, to help each other solve puzzles as you go along. And I guess they said that along the way they found a dead body, which is kind of crazy. And then the other half of us, it was called the playground. And I guess the premise is just so silly because you watch this like 2-minute video kind of explaining the scenario, and it's like, oh, it's the last day of school before summer, and you have to finish all your assignments so you can get your grades, so that way you can go play the other 5th grade dodgeball team. And it's so funny. And they show the dodgeball team. It's like these grown adults. It's like they're not in 5th grade. It's just like kind of ridiculous. But anyways, it was really, really cool. I really, if anyone's ever thought about doing an escape room, I really recommend it. Those are tons of fun.
There was one. You mentioned the Prison Break. We did a Prison Break one, so I think most of them start that way with anyone that's called like prison something. It seems like it, anyways. But we did one in Taiwan, and it was so cool. At one point there were lasers, and you had to kind of Mission Impossible your way to enter a code. That was really cool.
There's a South Park one in LA.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's like centered around Eric Cartman. It's in the classroom. And I had a buddy who's begging me to go try that out, and never got a chance to do that while he was here. He ended up moving to Amsterdam, but that's one I still want to do. Maybe we should link up there.
Yeah, definitely.
Sometime.
There's also a zombie one too that I want to do here. That like the zombies on a chain, like a real actor in the room with you. Yeah, and the chain gets longer as time progresses, and if the zombie touches you, you're out.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
That's horrifying. But you know what though? That adds the intensity. That sounds like something.
Yeah.
That actually sounds worthwhile. That's something
more high risk, right?
Yeah, I don't think
high stakes. I mean.
Yeah. I don't think my wife would opt into that. She'd be like, no, absolutely not. So, well, let me do this here. I'm gonna go ahead and switch gears here. I'm gonna go ahead and we're gonna go into the fun segment here. Bear with me just a sec. I was telling you about this, and let me just back out here a little bit. So what I have here for you today is I have some fun little trivia. So, and I know that you are, and we can talk about this a little bit afterwards, but you being the running guy, that's something that I really think that I think you'll appreciate this. Bear with me just one second here. Just gonna close some things out. Yeah, because I've done I'll do like tier lists. I'll do, yeah, I'd like to have some fun with this. Okay, let me go ahead and share my screen here. Let me pull this up. Where the heck was it? Okay. No, where is it? Oh, here it is. Okay. All right. So what I have here, hopefully you'll appreciate this. Okay. Can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay. So what I have here is I've curated photos from every single Tom Cruise movie where he's running. Okay. And you have to tell me what movie it is.
Oh, geez. Okay.
So the first one right here.
Oh, I have no idea. I know I've seen this movie because this looks super familiar, and then I'm thinking the Notre Dame movie, but I don't think it's that. Or is it Rudy?
No, it's not Rudy.
Yeah, it's not Rudy.
Yeah. So this is All the Right Moves. Yeah. Okay. All right. This one right here. Next one.
Is that him running in the front screen?
That's him, the red beret.
Oh my gosh, that's Tom Cruise.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know this one either, man. I am not I've seen a bit of Tom Cruise movies because he's in a lot of stuff, but
yeah, for sure. So this is Taps.
I don't think I've seen this one.
It's like a military academy. It's like a high school, boarding school, military boarding school, and they it goes under siege. It's got him. It's got George C. Scott's in it. It's pretty, yeah.
I would enjoy that.
It's kind of over the. I mean, movies in general are over the top. This is like way over the top.
Yeah.
I can't. It's like this is unbelievable. All right, next one right here.
Oh man. Oh man. I keep thinking Mission Impossible and Top Gun, but it's not either of those.
Yeah.
Moneyball, is he in that?
No, he's not Moneyball, unfortunately.
What? Oh, I don't know this one either.
This is
I'm
the
0 for
Rain
3. What
yeah,
is it?
This is Rain Man.
Oh, Rain Man.
Yeah.
Dustin Hoffman.
Yep.
I know that one.
All right, next one right here.
Oh, geez.
Yeah.
Man.
There's 15 of these, by the way.
Oh, geez. This is like a movie from the late 80s, early 90s. I can tell. But other than that,
yeah, you're right about that.
that's all I got.
This is Born on the 4th of July. Yeah.
I don't think I've seen that one.
All right, next one right here. This is a classic.
Oh wait, no. He's the guy running there.
So this is Robert Duvall running.
It's not Hunt for Red October.
No.
I don't know this one.
This one is Days of Thunder.
Days of Thunder.
Yeah, it was the stock car racing movie.
With
Michael Rooker's in it from Walking Dead and Guardians of the Galaxy. He's in it as well.
Oh wow.
Yeah. All right, next one right here.
Man, I don't know Tom Cruise well enough. Are you a big Tom Cruise guy?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
I respect
know your movies.
I respect his I respect his ability to take risks. That's what I really like about him is his ability to really like go for it with some of these roles.
I don't know this one.
This is Far and Away.
Far and Away.
Yeah, where he was with Nicole Kidman in this film.
Okay.
I think just before they got married. All right, next one right here.
Mission Impossible.
There we go. Mission Impossible. Yep, there we go. On the board.
Got one. I was waiting for that one.
Okay, this one right here.
Oh, is that the End of the World one?
No. Another guess?
I don't have one. Yeah, I don't know.
This is Vanilla Sky.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That was a good movie. I liked Vanilla Sky. Minority Report.
Yes, there we go.
Yeah, I got another one.
Yeah, this is a great. I love this movie. This is such a great movie.
Oh, this is on Netflix, and my brother-in-law and sister-in-law recently moved in with us, and he was just watching this the other day. I don't remember the name. Samurai or something.
Almost.
Last Samurai.
Yes, Last Samurai.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is a good film. Yeah. All right, here we go.
Oh, geez. Starts with an F, I think, and is it the guys in the taxi together? Fracture?
Yeah, in a Taxi does not start with an F though.
Oh man, I don't know, but that's all I got. I do know it's a taxi movie.
This is Collateral.
Collateral, and it's what's his name?
Jamie Foxx.
Jamie Foxx.
Yeah, and it's basically where he pays his cab driver to go along with him as he does like these hit jobs.
That's a good movie.
Yeah,
I like that movie.
All right, here we go.
Ooh. I can't tell what that is. Oh man, I don't know this one. I think I've seen it though.
Yeah. I'll give you a hint. Just pay attention to like what's kind of happening in the background.
I see. It's like a Western type, right?
Well, they're on a farm.
Early Pioneer
is what it is.
I don't know. Yeah.
This is War of the Worlds.
Oh, this is the War of the Worlds. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, I've seen this one. I think I've almost have a memory. Maybe it's this one. I don't know. For some reason, it's bringing up a memory of like laying on my living room floor watching it with my dad. But I don't know this one though.
This one is Night and Day.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. This is directed by James Mangold. He did 3:10 to Yuma. He also did Logan.
Oh, okay. Logan.
And I think he did Walk the Line as well with the Johnny Cash biopic.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I don't think I've seen
all these are fun movies. Yeah. So
yeah. Well, it looks Walk the Line. Ooh. I don't know this one. I would have said Minority Report. Maybe there was this one too, but
This one is any final guesses or any final?
no,
Okay.
I don't. Yeah,
This is Oblivion.
Oblivion. Yeah, I don't think I've seen this one.
Yeah, this one came out 2013. This is silly. I just think it's silly the whole outfit he's wearing in a fun way.
And he's running away from the explosion.
Yeah.
Oh man, I think this one's fairly recent, like 2016, but I don't know it.
This is Edge of Tomorrow.
Edge of Tomorrow.
That's the one where it's like live, die, repeat.
Okay.
It's with Emily Blunt, where he's like the soldier and like he can just like keep dying and he just like basically just goes keeps going back into war like the same battle over and over again. And he tries to do things differently. It's almost like Groundhog Day meets like I don't know, some futuristic military movie.
Groundhog Day.
Yeah. So that there we go.
That's the last one. I think I got like three out of 50.
Yeah. No, but I also want to ask you because one of the things I caught on your Facebook updates is the fact that you did a 50-mile race. So what was that like? Where was it? Like what were the whole circumstances behind that?
Yeah. It was the hardest race of my life for sure. I did a marathon on the Great Wall of China, and that was my hardest up until now.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
That must have been cool.
Yeah, it was really cool. A third of it were stairs though, so it was tough. Yeah. But yeah, the 50-mile race. So it was in the foothills of Mount Whitney, which is like north of here about 3 hours. And the elevation gain was crazy. I don't remember off the top of my head, so I don't want to say a number that's like completely off. But yeah, I was doing good. I was feeling really good up until mile 38. And at mile 38, I like bonked. You call it bonked in running. I guess maybe if you're a runner, you're familiar, but like you just don't have the energy because your body doesn't like physically have the glucose or whatever you need to kind of keep going. And I just like sat down. I'm like, okay, I'm done. I'm like done.
Oh, wow.
And I was sitting on the ground, and it was probably like mile 40 at that point. And some people would pass by me, other racers. I mean, not a lot. Like I feel like 6 people, because not a lot of people do these races.
For sure, yeah.
Compared to like if you go to like a marathon, you see like thousands of people. This race had 100 for 50 mile. I think we had like 800 people total across all the different race lengths. And so finally, some guy said, "Dude, you just gotta like eat these gummies." And he gave me some gummies, and I ate them, and it kind of laid there for a little bit longer. I finally got up and finished, but the last like 10 miles is a lot of walking. So it took me a while to finish. It was 12 hours. So I think we started at 6 and I got back around 6.
That's crazy. That's like races like that they're so demanding. So how did you prep for that race?
I ate a bit like leading up to it, and like the biggest key for those races, from my understanding, like this is my first one, so I'm no expert, but is eating a lot and regularly while you're running. So you want to eat like every 30 minutes. You want to be putting something in your mouth to eat. And I was doing pretty good with my nutrition for the race up until like mile. I saw like my family, my wife and her parents and brother and sister-in-law at one point, and my body like just didn't want to eat anything. So I was like, I just don't feel like eating anything. And I like would try to put something in my mouth, and my mouth would just kind of like almost want to spit it out. But then eventually, like I said, when the guy said, you just got to eat something, and I did, and that actually really helped a lot. So I think my struggle was my nutrition, and I just need to be better at that.
What was your training regimen like leading into this event?
So I was not running as much as I would like to every week. I wanted to get up to like 50 miles a week, but I was probably at like 40. And 50 would have been the low end I wanted to target. I trained for the LA Marathon in 2019, and I messed up my Achilles. So it was about a year of like till I was fully recovered from that. And then I finally was able to kind of build up my mileage up until this last race was in 2022. But like running 5 to 7 days a week, and then usually at least 5 miles a day. And then some days I would run twice. But I definitely was not doing as much as I could have or should have been doing.
Right.
I'd like to try it again. I would like to do 100 or 200-mile race. It's my next
Yeah,
goal.
because I know of like those ultra marathon runners who do 100-mile races, but then I learned probably about 2-3 years ago, there's the Moab 240, I think is what it's called,
Yeah, that's insane.
which is I think that's the most. I'm not sure. Maybe you might be able to say differently, but I think that's the most. That's probably the craziest race I've heard of to date, because it's not just the distance but the elevation that
Mm.
really gets the people. I mean, can you think of any race that's like crazier than that?
Yeah, that one's pretty insane from what I've heard. There's also I can't remember what it's called, the Badwater. So you start at
Yeah, yeah,
like
yeah.
the lowest elevation point, and you used to go to the highest elevation point in the US, like the contiguous states, but they stop it a little bit earlier now. But you're basically like 110-degree desert heat when you start the race. And I've heard stories where you have to run on the white part of the road because the black part will burn like your shoes and your feet.
Yeah, that's crazy. I know I've heard of Badwater as well, and it's funny because both I've heard of both of those through just hearing stories from David Goggins is.
Oh yeah, I read his
Yeah.
book. His book's
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah,
Great
yeah,
book.
because because he did the Moab race, and he did Badwater as well, and that's where the story I heard about David Goggins was, I guess at one point during the race, um he went off course by,
Mm,
I don't want to get the distance wrong, but it was for a lengthy distance. It was maybe like 10 or 20 miles off course or something like that, and he finally got back on course, and then he realized, hey, you're messed up. You gotta go to the hospital, and he got checked out with the hospital. But then like the next day, he was back on the race. Something ridiculous like that.
yeah, he's
Uh,
insane.
yeah, it's all mental. But like and I guess what I like, talk about this with someone like you. I guess maybe you can relate with this, but I tend to notice that there's a specific personality that goes hand in hand, or specific work ethic that usually shows up among people who are runners. They tend to be people who are industrious in a lot of ways. I mean, like, would you agree that that's like a truth among people like who run, generally speaking?
Yeah. I mean, for me, I would say like a big thing is like I think I've gotten a lot better at it, but at the same time, you have to be forgiving. Like I mentioned, my training was not where it should have been or where it could have been, but I've learned to forgive myself about that stuff. And one thing that I like to do is usually when I set a goal, I'm gonna do it. Like opening the brick and mortar store, like I'm gonna figure out a way to make it work. Running this 50-mile race, no, I was not as well trained as I would like to be, but I'm gonna finish this race. Even though in the moment I was pretty ready to give up at 40 miles, but I would have still been like forgiving to myself. Maybe after a couple days, I would have been beating myself up, but eventually I would, forgive myself and be like, okay, I just got to try it again. Like just train better and do it again. So I think that's like a big thing. Like I mentioned before, is every little thing you do every day is important because it's going towards that end goal and just keeping that in mind. But as I said, it's something I still need to work on.
Well, yeah, for sure. I think to that point as well. I guess something I've learned about myself, I guess just people in general, is that we all have different blind spots, but I would say but the sum of our blind spots is roughly the same. It just, we all know the human mind can only retain so much knowledge. I
Mm,
guess is my point. And so there's always gonna be something that we don't know, or we forget, or something that we could still learn.
right.
And I think that it just kind of plays into that as well. We're always um we could always improve in different areas and get better. And so yeah, that's basically the way I kind of look at that. And
Sure.
I think fitness is just a good way to approach that too, where it's just like, okay, I'm not as good today, I need to get,
Mm,
that's why I'm gonna go run tomorrow or whatever. This is why I'm like, something I'm really bad with is stretching.
yeah, me
I
too.
I am horrifically bad with stretching. Like, I just remember, like, I've always been pretty inflexible. And then I remember seeing this article when I was in college. A buddy posted on Facebook. It was like some study by, I think it was like George Washington University in DC. It's like, oh,
Mm,
stretching doesn't actually prevent injuries. I'm like, well, that's good enough for me. That was basically the end of it for the most. I mean, I would, because I was, having been an Army officer and doing that, you'll do like, formations, you'll run, you'll typically stretch all together before and after the run. But apart from that, though, stretching was not a thing for me up until like fairly recently, especially during the pandemic, where I would, again, like people were like, oh, Netflix and chill. I was like, not me. I'm not doing Netflix and chill. That's a recipe for failure. So I would, if I wasn't out running, if I couldn't do any type of lifting, I would do yoga, and I appreciated that more and more. And so like, I just think that there's a lot of value with doing something like that, and that's something I've come to really appreciate more and more, just because it's the, you know. You seem like you're close to an age with me, so I think you appreciate like we're not getting younger. I'm sure like there's days where like, man, I was so much more fit, years ago. I wish I could capture some of that back, and so the small things you do along the way are really helpful.
Oh yeah. I think it's important to look at that as a way to get mentally and physically healthy, and not just be caught up in the vanity of it too.
For sure, yeah, yeah. The vanity aspect can be very distracting. Although I will say, you got to pat yourself on the back every once in a while, because most people aren't even watching you. You know what I'm saying? Like, just to kind of keep that momentum going. So that's the only thing I would add to that. But yeah, like people who are constantly doing selfies in the gym, which is sort of okay. Like, you don't have to do a selfie every time.
Right. Yeah,
for sure. Well, Dustin, this is a really fun conversation. I would, love to do it again sometime. I'd love to maybe we should go down and do an escape room sometime. I think that'd be tons of fun. But Dustin, for people who are, where can they find your store, for example? Like, do you have a website with information? Like, where's it located? Like, what can you share with us about it?
Yeah. Well, first off, I appreciate you having me on again, Andy. This was really good. Really fun. Good to chat like this.
Yeah.
Hopefully we'll get that escape room in. So finding us, we're at bgetabletop.com. Signing up for a newsletter if you want to keep up with the store, like if you're local to the area. And even if you're not, we do share some updates for people that are part of our online community too. And then we're on all social media. Usually if you search BGE Tabletop, we'll show up. We are on TikTok too. That's probably our most active social media these days. Seems like it's the hot one.
Yep. Okay, cool. Awesome. Again, Dustin, I've really enjoyed working with you in the past on Crypto Cartel. I couldn't get it across the finish line if it wasn't for people like you. So if you ever are interested, if you're watching this and you're really curious about board game design, you can either approach myself or Dustin. Dustin's a great source of knowledge as well. He helped me find my manufacturer, for example. So I'm really grateful for that. In addition to like the rule book design, which I thought was great. And so again, thanks for stopping by, Dustin, and let's connect again soon.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you.
All right, man.